Okay.
In silence, God ceases to be an object and becomes an experience. Thomas Merton. One more, Thomas Merton. At the
Mhm.
center of our being is a point of nothingness, which is untouched by sin and by illusion, a point of pure truth, a point or spark which is inaccessible to the fantasies of our own mind or the brutalities of our own will. This little point of nothingness and of absolute poverty is like a pure diamond blazing with the invisible light of heaven. It is in everybody. And if we could see it, we would see these billions of points of light coming together in the face and blaze of a sun that would make all the darkness and cruelty of life vanish completely. So welcome to the Institute for Advanced Astonishment. And our guest today is a man who married my sister. But he didn't marry her, but he, how do you say it?
I
That was my
celebrated
brother.
the wedding.
Yes. Father Joe Staudt, welcome. And Father Joe, if you don't mind, the whole podcast is about anyone tuning in, maybe they're suffering or they're trying to find this, what Thomas Merton's talking about there. And we try to offer tools that, like meditation or any kind of techniques or advice that would help someone get to that point, that still point that Thomas Merton's talking about.
Mhm.
So welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Great to see you.
Same here.
So we've known each other forever. I know you wanted to be a priest, I think as a young, you were pretty young when you had a calling.
That's true.
Not even a teenager, or maybe a teenager?
Yeah, just about in my teenage years, I had an interest. Uh, as I was approaching my teenage years, I felt that I always admired my parish priests because they seemed to be very kind people, very people oriented, and then and they gave themselves to God, and I just felt a friendship with God from the very beginning of my life. I think, as long as I can remember.
And do you think that people that don't feel that, I always liken it to like a radio dial, like they're just not quite on that frequency, that channel where you were so in the love of God early, but it took me a lifetime to find it. I denied it for so many years, but I loved people and I loved living, but I couldn't understand what God was.
I think that's a great example, Jim. I think God sends out the radio signals to everybody, and people don't maybe call those radio signals that invitation for friendship. They don't call it God. There are many very good people who are living good lives, and but they don't acknowledge God or realize it's God. But it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Goodness is what matters.
That's beautiful. I love that. So, and then the people that can't access this maybe had some trauma, or maybe you and I, like I had a nice childhood. I'm sure. How was your childhood?
Yeah, I had a very, very blessed childhood. Good parents,
Yeah.
brother and sisters. We had a good childhood growing up.
And they would take you to the church and you would feel some kind of connection with these priests that were up there with the nuns and talking beautifully and loving and
Yes,
kind.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I saw particularly the priests, the way they would speak at mass, and after mass they'd greet the people, and I said, "Gee, that's really wonderful how they just seem to be loving people, and I want to be like that." I said,
So that's amazing. It reminds me of what Merton would say, that we're already one, and then
hmm
we sort of forgot. We have to get back to it because it's already who we are. It's our nature. And
exactly.
so in Christianity, what I know there's many tools or techniques, and there's the Gospels. Any what would be your favorite if you had a little toolbox of the best tools to get to that summit of love, of this beautiful frequency of what goodness is or God? What would you put in your toolbox?
You mean what particular gospel stories or verses
Yeah,
or
that or
yeah,
metaphors or
yeah,
maybe we could talk about a little bit. I don't know if we ever got to talk about it, Lectio Divina,
yeah,
and that like the divine reading and
hmm,
digest things like that, or meditation or prayer,
yeah, yeah,
centering
Well,
prayer.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, I to use your example, which is another good one about say mountain climbing and the tools that you need. I would say there's a couple of I don't know much about mountain climbing at all, but I know that they have certain tools that look like a pickaxe and a
Yes.
little shovel and all that. I think I think you got to have some things in your toolkit in order to get up there. And well, what's the main thing? I let me let me add or offer another image. It's like a friendship. When you meet somebody, say for example, if it's in school or on a sports team or wherever it might be, and the person you kind of hit it off, as the saying goes, right? And you
Right.
say, this person, I really like this person, um, and so what's the next step? Well, you want to get to know the person, right? Tell me a bit about yourself. You want to get to spend time with the person, right? That's another thing. So, and then that budding friendship, if it's going to go anywhere, you want to spend more time with the person. You want to learn more about, and you want to share yourself with that person because you trust the person. So I use that image of, I think, how God
That's great.
relates to us, and it's and I would have to say this, and this is not my thought. I've read this from several spiritual directors and writers. Unless you have a human experience of love, you're not going to understand and have an experience with God.
Right.
So some
So,
people, I guess,
so,
are
and
just
when you say
crippled.
human experience, it could be romantic love or parent love or friendship.
Right. That's
And
right.
then there's this agape love, which is this universal
Right.
love that blows it all away. But you're saying you
Right.
need the lower level love to get, not that it's lower, but to get to that
Yeah.
godly.
Right. Right. I think if you say what would we say about love? Like you said, it's not erotic love like eros.
Right.
Uh, Agape is the highest form.
Right.
But in other words, if you have an experience of being cared for just because it's you, like a mother's care for a child. The baby doesn't earn that care. The mother is just drawn to this child. It's her child, and if she's a good mother, she'll be attentive. She'll be helpful. She'll be loving. She'll be kind, and that baby soaks in that experience, etc. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's the way
Unconditional.
God is with us.
Unconditional love.
That's
The
right.
mothers are great. So if your mother, I'm thinking of like imagine someone who my mother was like an angel. My mother
Hmm.
like a mystical
Hmm.
angel. Angels all over the house, very kind. And but what about someone whose mother like rejected them?
Hmm.
How do we pull? Do they have to find it? How do we nudge them towards this get out of the darkness into the light a little bit? I guess they
Yeah.
have to want it first, or God's doing that. The universal consciousness is
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, some people who start off life where they're not wanted, or they don't receive that nurturing from either parent, or either parents have maybe a bad relationship,
Right.
or there's violence in the house. And as I've read, if a child is abused physically or psychologically, they become abusers. That's what they transmit that. As Richard Rohr says, what you don't absorb, you transmit. Right.
Yes.
So, um, but people like that are wounded, and it's not their fault, but they're wounded, and they have to learn that that they're lovable. They have to have some self-esteem, and they have to trust somebody to love them, because understandably people who are wounded say I'm not lovable, and they're suspicious of people want to have a friendship with them, for example, a
Right.
relationship with them. Like, why? Do you want something from me? And they ought to be, I would say, you have to have compassion for people like that because they can't help it. They're wounded.
Yes. I remember you gave me a little tour and you took me, I remember your face. We got to the height of the rectory, I think, and in the bathroom there was this one word under the mirror and it was trust. And you
Hmm.
just smiled and I never forgot it. Like that, the way you said it and the way you showed it. Would you put that in the tool kit? So trust is like that step. They need to let
Yeah,
go, they need to trust.
exactly, exactly. And that's a hard thing to do, is to let go and to trust, just particularly if you're wounded, if you haven't had an opportunity to be nurtured and loved and cared for, then you've got the proverbial two strikes against you, and then you find it hard when somebody tries to reach out to you and see something in you that you don't see in yourself. Then the suspicion arises because you have to defend yourself. You've been hurt for so long that you think
Yes.
everybody is going to hurt you, and
You have the
but
armor. The armor is
that's right.
on. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And that's hard. Now, how does a person break through that? Well, I can't answer my own question. It's uh, it's somebody has to break through, and they have to be ready, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the mystery of one of the
Yeah.
mysteries of the human person. That how can some people break through and allow to be nurtured and loved and cared for, and break through that wound of lack of self-esteem. And
Yeah.
some people maybe never do, or only to a certain extent.
Yeah. So we
I think,
know,
the
oh,
people,
sorry.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry, the people who are in prison, people say, well, they're a danger to society. Maybe they have been, but again, they're transmitting what they received, like an abused child, it becomes an abuser. Somebody who's nasty to people, you say, well, they're, what a nasty person. But I would think by and large, you would see if you looked at their background, they're wounded, very deeply
Yeah.
wounded people.
It's just, I always think of Christmas Carol with Ebenezer
Mm,
Scrooge and, when his mother gave birth to him, she
that's
died.
right.
So his
That's
father
right.
threw him in the orphanage and hated him,
Right.
not hated him, but he couldn't look at him because he saw his wife that had died giving birth
That's
to
right.
this son. And so he lived his whole life. And then he did the same to everybody. I think his sister in the play, or in the story, gives birth to the nephew and she dies. And he loved his
Mm-hmm.
sister. She gave him that unconditional love. And now she gave birth to the nephew. She dies. So he hated the nephew. And
Right.
and it took that night of going, of like a near death experience, basically, of the
Hmm.
past and the present and the future, and seeing his own tombstone and seeing all his mistakes and going
Hmm.
over his life, and in it to have a second chance. It gave him. So that's what it's all this channel's about, is how do we get it quickly to that second chance,
Yeah.
breadcrumbs and tools and
Yeah.
techniques.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess the beginning of it is that a person again who, and we're all wounded to a certain extent, but somebody that is severely wounded hasn't had a chance in childhood, if they, as we call it, a rough childhood. Um, they have to, and anybody with our wounds, we have to, as you said before, let go and trust that this person is interested in me. Maybe I don't feel I'm worth it. I don't feel I'm lovable. I don't feel okay, but something has to break through where you have, as you said before, let go. I'm gonna take a chance, and that's a huge thing for people.
I like you say breakthrough. It's like my teacher told me it's like a piece of construction paper, like black, and if it was right here, right here, and then if you put a little tiny pinprick through it, a little light can get through, and then
Hmm.
another, and if you put a few near each other, it kind of makes a big, you could bust a hole, and then once the
Hmm.
light starts coming through, you want more light, and then finally it just tears open. But you need those little rips in the veil or tears.
That's right. Yeah.
So, so when did you ever have to maintain, like, did you ever, I mean, you had this grace, but did you ever lose it a little bit and have to did you learn a few things like pitfalls or traps to steer away from to maintain it and nurture this garden, the soil, and keep letting it flower? Once you see something, you want to keep it going. You don't want to lose. Many times you can have a beautiful mystical experience or religious experience or experience of love, and then the next day you're back in, or even a few hours later, a leak comes through the roof and you lose your
Yeah.
job and things go bad and you forget, like an
Yeah.
amnesia.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like any friendship, I go back to that image. In any relationship, if it's I've never been married, but I mean, but I've had friends, so I know what friendship is. But any human relationship, that relationship is sooner or later going to come to and I'll say a detour. It's gonna hit the wall. There's gonna be a misunderstanding,
I like that.
uh, and then and then it's what am I going to do about this? Am I going to try to work at this uh, reconciliation, or
Walk
am I going
away.
to say, well, that's
Yeah.
it? And the same is true with God. I think when we hit the wall in life and we say, well, if God loves me, how come God let this happen to me? I think that's a very normal thing to go
Right.
through. But again, you got to work through that. Like you got to work through any kind of arguments or misunderstandings in a relationship, in a marriage or a friendship, etc. You have to say, is this worth putting the work into, or am I going to leave it? And we can do the same with God. You can say, well, I mean, I know people and I don't blame them because, as we said, God's love is unconditional. Um, People will say, I went to church for years. I supported my parish. I prayed all the time. I followed the rules of my religion, and God still let this happen to me. It doesn't make sense. And they say, so why bother anymore going to church, going to that, doing this? So, and they leave God, and they say, well, I used to be Catholic. I used to be whatever, but I don't do that anymore. And, but see, the beautiful thing, like you said, God's love is unconditional. God never leaves us. God will never leave
Yeah.
us. But as in any friendship, it's a two-way street. So when you're ready, God will say, God's door is always open, but the doorknob is on our side, not God's. And
Right.
you got to open the door, and God's
That's
waiting on the
great.
other side.
I read a book once on Meister Eckhart, the great mystic, who I think
Mm-hmm.
Merton said was his lifeboat, like in the dark,
Mm-hmm.
like this was my lifeboat, Meister Eckhart. And it said, the church, as you know, the door is open and you can come in and you can light a candle and it's so beautiful. And there's the stained glass windows and the high ceilings and you can get this beautiful feeling and there's music and the priest comes out. It's all great. But there's another door, a hidden door, like you with the knob, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
if you can find that, this podcast is all about finding that hidden door within the church, metaphoric door, that if you could find that hidden deeper door and you knock, that's when Meister Eckhart opens the door, or that's the mystical, the deepening of the experience, the
Mm-hmm.
mystical.
Yeah. Yeah. And Merton has a prayer, and doesn't have a title to it, but it's one of his best known. It starts off, Lord, I do not know where I'm going. I have it in my saved clips, scripture quotes and things.
Yes.
But part of the message is sometimes I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know if I'm even pleasing you. But the desire to please you, in fact, please you. So it's a kind of the interesting, mysterious thing that you have. Do you want to find God? Some people they don't. They say, no, I don't believe in God, and but honestly, that doesn't matter because let's take a guy like Harry Chapin. All right,
Yeah.
Harry Chapin, as far as I know, he was not a believer. He was an atheist.
Right.
But look at what he did. The program, is it Food for People or things like that on Long Island? And he started something that is still in existence. That program feeds and takes care of a lot of people. That's what he was interested in, compassion. Now, in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25, is well known to a lot of Christians. When I was hungry at the end of time, the king is going to say, when I was hungry, when I was thirsty, when I was sick, when I was in prison, when I was lonely, you came and you ministered to me. And they will say to him, when did we see you? Interesting. They didn't do it for Jesus. They did it because they saw a human being that was hurting, that was suffering, and they wanted to help alleviate that suffering. So, in other words, God didn't say to Harry Chapin when he perished and he faced God, God didn't say, well, you never believed in me, so why should I believe in you? No, according to that scripture, and this is not my opinion, it's in the gospel of Jesus Christ. As long as you did it for the least of my sisters and brothers, you did it for me.
That's
so
it.
you don't have to be a religious person. You don't have to be a believer. You just have to be somebody who's a person of compassion. And here's what I say to people. If you're trying to make your world, your piece of the world, a better place, that's what God is asking of you. And even if you say, well, I don't believe in God, well,
That's
fine.
okay.
That's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Can we say everything you just said is so perfect? And all I'm hearing the whole time is we carry these concepts of God, what we think God might be, and we don't believe in that concept. We don't realize that doesn't matter. I mean, that blocks us a little bit from
That's right.
knowing that beautiful, blissful experience of, but at the same time, you can do the work, and like Harry Chapin, and you're loving others, and you say, oh, I don't believe in God, but yeah, you don't believe in, as Richard Rohr would say, a guy in a cloud throwing thunderbolts like Zeus.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's fine not to believe in that, because that's not what God is. God's not that. God is just love, the deepest, deepest, beyond words love. So it's just, sometimes we carry these, like Meister Eckhart said, I pray to you, God, so to rid me of God, so I may know you. I may know God.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
Can you go over that?
Yeah, and that's why in contemplative prayer, the contemplative masters like Merton, Meister Eckhart, John Main, he was a Benedictine priest, Thomas Keating, who was another one who was a teacher of a contemplative prayer.
Basil Pennington, right?
Basil Pennington, that's another, exactly. They will all say, don't think about God. Like you said before, Jim, your image of God, because that's not God. So when you pray, you use a mantra, and you just have that mantra go into the God space wherever we say God is. God's everywhere, but
Yes.
don't a cubbyhole God. Don't put God in a
That's
cubbyhole.
great. I love cubby.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or in your pocket, and trot it out when you need it.
Yeah,
Oh, I need
yeah,
it now.
or you think you can figure out how God should be, because you're going to be disappointed, because that's not God. For example, the person who says, and again, I'm not blaming people. We can't judge people because God doesn't, or if God does, God's judgment, as has been said. Walter Casper is a German cardinal. He said, God's justice is mercy, and God's mercy is his justice. So in other words, but when somebody says, for years I went to church, for years I prayed, I gave money to the church, I followed all the rules, I tried to live a moral life, and God still let this happen. So that person's idea of God is that it's like God owes me. Like I kept paying off the premium for my insurance, and the insurance didn't work. It didn't help. So, excuse me. What good was with those prayers? So, again, prayer is not an invisible shield to keep me from getting hurt or getting sick or having problems. prayer is to keep me connected with God, and to pray that I have trust in God, that though I can't understand God, and we can't fully, and trust, and that's the hard part, trust or faith. It's very hard to do that, especially in times of suffering. To believe that you hear God is with us in our suffering. Yeah, but I want God to do something about it. Well, that's when we don't really get it, But it's understandable, because we are always a quid pro quo. If I exercise, I should lose this weight. If I read this book, I should have more insight. A quid pro quo. An effort produces a result. But that's not prayer. Prayer is being with God. Prayer is,
Yes.
that's it. And letting God be God, and trying to accept, and this is the hard part, accept that I will never understand God completely. I say to people, there are more questions than there are answers, at least on this side of eternity.
That's great. I love letting God be God, not trying to, like you said, cubbyhole God into what you want. And maybe when we climb the mountain to this summit, metaphorically, of this unconditional love which is inside of us, we have to just keep pulling away and stripping away the husks of unreality and bullshit and illusion and all this stuff. Just keep getting it away. Maybe on the way up the mountain, I always say silence is a good Sherpa to take with you. But maybe Job, maybe we can go into a little bit of Job. Job would be a good Sherpa to go up the mountain, have Job carrying some stuff with you in your ear.
Yeah.
Because
and then,
can we set that up, Job?
Yeah, well, in the book of Job, of course, the question is, Job has everything figured out, all right, because he knows who God is in his own mind.
Right.
Now he's leading a good life, a profitable life, and again, the Jewish people, up until even the time of Jesus, thought that the signs of leading a good life and being close to God were prosperity, material prosperity, and then Jesus kind of turned that upside down when the disciples saw that. And we say, why do good people suffer? Because it blows away that old belief that God will reward you materially, even if you're a good person. So Job, who believed that, as most Jewish people did at the time, said, well, all of a sudden now you pull the rug out from under me. I'm losing family members. I'm losing all the wealth I had, all the material things.
God makes a bet with the devil, right? That's the idea.
Yeah.
You think that Job loves you, but what if you took away all that abundance? What if you took away?
That's right. Yeah.
And God said, go ahead.
Right. And the devil was saying, Job's a fair weather friend. He's good to you because you've been good to him.
Devil, could we say, maybe to people that aren't Christian, that are listening, that the devil is sort of like a force of separation from this universal, beautiful, it's like the thing that would separate you from all of this love. It's the wall or the something.
I mean,
that's a little simple, but
no, it's good, but because it is, but the devil, Satan, it's an illusion, because he can't destroy that. I mean, God gives us free will, and we can accept or reject God's offers of love, but God doesn't give up, and that's the thing. God never tires of approaching us, and God will continue.
I love that. Right there.
Yeah. It's always there.
Right. Like it's like God, or again, not a man in a cloud throwing the thunderbolts and judging everybody and drowning everyone, but this universal love that's beyond anything. You have to experience it to know it. Is like always right with you, rooting you on to turn around and see it, and like a hide and seek game, it's right there saying, just turn around once, just stop with the cookies or the trips or the things or the gambling, whatever you're doing, just stop for a minute and turn within, and I'm right. It's right here. It's
it's very true. You referred to an image of God as like the Zeus with the lightning bolts. Well, many years ago there was a movie that had come out. I don't know where it went, but it was called Oh God, and you know who played God? George Burns.
I saw
A
that.
very Oh, you did, yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, George was a very unassuming grandpa type.
Yes.
So why can't we imagine God to be like that? Like good grandpas,
I
loving
love that.
grandpas. Yeah,
And that's
I
more
do too.
immediate, what you're saying, like more closer to us, like God and us are, it's made in the same
Mhm.
image. So get
Yeah,
closer and closer to this. Don't make it some far out above on a throne deity that's, you know, like a king. But we get the imagery, but you can get lost in that. I like the
right.
grandpa better, a loving grandpa. And when they asked him to do a miracle, he pulled out a deck of cards. He did
Yeah, yeah,
cards.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so what I love about Job is God take he loses everything, and then he's getting a little upset. Maybe I don't. Did he get a little upset?
Yeah, oh yeah,
In a
yeah.
Woody Allen version, Woody said God got a little too close to Job after all the destruction, and Job put God in a headlock. It's funny, funny Woody Allen. But what I love is what we talk about here, the mystical experiences. Instead of praying, why, like Job had all these questions, like, why are you doing this? All God had to do was show up. All you have to do is experience it. Like if you pray or meditate, don't ask for anything, but just experience. Then you don't need anything. You don't have to ask for a new car or a new job or a
Right.
better relationship or whatever you want. All you need is to experience this, and that's what you really wanted. Everything else is just a representation of the cookie, the brownie, the trip
Mhm.
to Paris, wherever whatever your dreams are. That's
Yeah.
that's a shadow compared to the real thing that you want, which is
Mm.
the good news, the truth.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, 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 and that's why when we pray, we just want to be with in the presence of. I mean, we always are in the presence of God, but prayer is being aware
Yes,
that I'm in the presence of God,
that's great.
and to just ask God to help me to live with peace of mind, with an assurance that God is taking care of me. God is watching out for me. God wants me to have a happy life, like any parents. When I was in the parish, and I would sit down with a couple to arrange for their baby's baptism, I would ask them, "What do you want for your baby? You have this new little baby, weeks old. What do you want for this child? What are your hopes and dreams for this child?" And they would say things. I want my child to be happy. Want them to be at peace. Want them to have an enjoyable life, not to suffer. And I said, did you ever think that what you want for God, God wants the same for you?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they would say, "No, I never really thought of it that way." I said, well, I think parenthood, I think it's got to be a religious experience, because good parents, I'm talking about, what good parents want for their children, that's exactly what God
Yeah,
wants for them, you know.
it's unconditional.
Yeah, it's unconditional. That's right. That's exactly. And I would say to them, if you're a good parent, there is nothing that this child could ever do to embarrass you to the degree, or anger you to the degree, or upset you to the degree that you would say, "You are dead to me. You are no longer my son. You're no longer my daughter." They would say, "No, if you love them, they could maybe hurt you, but you're not going to stop loving them. You're still their parent." And that's the way God is with us.
Yes,
He's never
and
going to
that's
stop.
that's forgiveness there, right? That's a big thing. That would be a tool maybe in your toolbox, forgiveness.
Yeah.
That's a
Oh
big
yeah.
one. Like a
Yeah.
big forgiveness, not a I'm on the throne saying I forgive you, Father Joe. No, not with a scepter, but a forgiveness because you know the truth, a
That's
deeper
right.
forgiveness,
Hmm.
unconditional. That's why it's beautiful when someone um, in such a tragedy where maybe like you said, anybody who hurt someone was probably hurt it goes back and back to their
Mm-hmm.
fathers and their grandfather. So someone
Yeah.
maybe kills a teen kills a teen, 19-year-old, not even aware of anything yet, kills another 18-year-old, but then the mother forgives the one that killed her own son and
Mm-hmm.
changes his life or her life, by that forgiveness could work wonders on that frequency.
Oh yeah, yeah. No question about that.
Because if you don't forgive, you're still like in the world of two, like it's a grudge. And if it's all one, who do you have a problem with, really? You have to
Right. Yeah,
stop holding.
exactly.
So can you go into a little bit of centering prayer? It's so close to transcendental meditation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people, they try to meditate and they just can't sit with that monkey mind. But centering
Right.
prayer at least gives you something to do during. So I would tell our mutual friend Angela, to meditate, and she would say, "Okay, what do I do?" And I say, "Do nothing. Just you don't have to do anything." And she'd say, "Yeah, but give me instructions." And I try, just follow your breath. But she
Yeah.
still thought she needed a big book of things. But centering prayer, giving her a mantra or a line that goes to her heart, she was able to do that. Give her something, but not a litany, but just a line. Is it one line or one word?
Well, what the spiritual masters encourage is a mantra that you have.
Oh, Father Joe, your volume just dropped.
Yeah,
Did you get it?
I'm getting a call. That's why.
Maybe I
I
should
don't know
talk
how to.
for a second.
I don't
Just give
know
me a
if I
finger
can
when.
get this.
Oh, you're
All
back.
right.
You're back.
Yeah. Now, as the volume, I think the volume is still down though, right?
No, you're perfect.
Okay, because your volume was down.
Oh, sorry. Well, you talk centering prayer.
Yeah. All right. So centering prayer would be just to try to empty your, as you said, the monkey mind. The mind is always going like, I have to do this, I have to remember, go to the store and get that, or something reminds me of, I had an argument with this person yesterday, uh, uh, or songs in my head playing. So we got to try to empty that mind, and we do that by first of all silence, and by using a mantra, whatever is, if some people would say love, uh, or some recommend like one syllable, others
Yes.
it doesn't have to be just one. But let's say somebody chooses love because God is love. All right. So, and then what they do is they say that word love, and they just try to sit in the quiet and the silence without thoughts, without words. It's almost like when you look, if you look at a bonfire and you gaze into the fire, or you look at a fish tank in a Chinese restaurant with the fish are going by, and you just kind of look at it, and you're drawn into that, and you're not thinking of anything in particular. Well, that's kind of the experience of prayer, and that mantra, it pulls you back to the center when the mind starts going off. Like, well, I got to remember, I got to add ice cream to my shopping list. Oh, I say the love. I say the word love.
Right.
Etc.
It puts a monkey, like a wrench into the monkey mind apparatus that's always
Yeah.
turning and churning. It puts a wrench because it can't focus, and all of a sudden you wind up in the heart, which is like your core of
Yes.
your awareness. Or can you still hear? Can you hear me?
No, the volume is low. I don't know.
Wait, hold on 1 second. You know how we talk about the futility of words and finger pointing at the moon, that whole thing. Merton said, nothing that anyone says will be that important. And this is right before he was speaking at the Redwoods. Do you know those conferences at the Redwoods in California?
No, I'm not familiar with. I've never heard
It's
of
a
them.
brand new, just so you know, book, brand new, 2024. All his conferences in the Redwoods.
Oh wow.
So he says the great thing is prayer or meditation prayer itself, if you want a life of prayer, the way to get to it is by praying, which, so, and we hear that sometimes. Like I heard my teacher said, okay, you got to get beyond the words. And I said, okay. And he said, what are you doing today? I said, I'm so excited. I'm going to go to Borders Books, and I'm going to get a bunch of books in the Zen section that are about reading isn't it. The words aren't it. But I needed to read it. It was like this weird loop. I needed to confirm what he said with words that it wasn't words. I still needed them. It's like an addiction to the words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we want a life of beauty and prayer and devotion, but then we really want a theory of prayer and philosophy and a system and words about it and lectures on it, but we don't just sit there and do it.
Yeah. Well, it's like if somebody wants to learn how to play the drums, all right, and they'll watch a video, maybe et cetera, and they'll watch, or they'll buy video after video after video. No, you gotta jump on the kit, and you gotta
Right.
start playing.
Yes.
Or somebody wants to learn how to hit a baseball. He'll read books how to hit it. You do this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No, you got to get out there, and you got to have somebody throw you a baseball and hit.
And you're a drummer and you love baseball.
Yeah.
All right. So I have a question for you. What is your batting average? I don't know if you can do that. What is your batting average from the pulpit, from the altar? What is your batting average how many people do you think, beyond just an emotional, beautiful feeling or a comfort, how many people get it and they come to you and they knock on your door and they say, I got a deeper glimpse at what you talk. It's not just a comfort. Nothing wrong with comfort and emotion and making their lives better, but how there are people that come to you and I'm sure they say, you started me on this experience and now it's just unveiling itself for me.
Yeah, I would say that a majority of people that I speak to on a Sunday, I would take a guess that they're not into a contemplative prayer or meditation, but they'll make a comment that they'll say, what you said about God makes me see God in a different way.
That's great.
So, yeah, I think, excuse me, that's the beauty that I see being a part of that. It's almost like, when somebody explains something to you, maybe about a person, you say, gee, that person's awfully cheap. They don't spend money, etc. And then you say, well, when they grew up, they lived in poverty. Oh, that explains it now. So I think that's kind of what I see my preaching, which is God's gift to share with the people. It's not my wisdom, but it's God's. I'm just a conduit, I think. But people say to me, when you speak, you speak to my level. I understand God. I can understand God better. I understand.
Yes.
Etc. So it's that kind of an interesting thing, that the message is that they can identify, they can understand more. It's not so obtuse to them, not just, well, you just got to believe, that's it, and stop questioning. No, it might be all right to question. Okay, I feel that, et cetera,
That's great. Yeah, it's like if my glasses had like mud on them or whipped cream or something, all dirty, and you just wipe them a little bit, and all of a sudden everything's so much clearer, and they're like, is that, that's what you meant by God? Yeah. It's that immediate and right. It's like Merton said, it's shining right here, and it's not a fairy tale. It's right. It's immediate.
Yes, that's yeah.
As an atheist, it was far from me. It was God was in the void, and I didn't even believe that. But I would look in the void, but I never looked this way. I always looked out.
Yeah,
which is funny. Like the finger at the moon,
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Like you toss the dog the treat, and you say it's right there, and they look at the finger instead of
right. Yeah. Right.
There's a line in this Merton where it says, where he's talking about the futility of words, and I never heard this before until this week. It was narrowing in on what the Gospels call the one thing necessary. Is that
Mm-hmm.
ring? Yeah. Is that
Yeah,
just to
Mary
find?
and Martha story. Yeah,
So
yeah.
what that would be to actual direct experience or direct seeing, or the one thing
Well,
necessary.
yeah, I think what Jesus was referring to when Jesus went to the home of Martha and Mary and Lazarus, whom he raised from the dead, and he was invited to dinner. Martha is setting up the dinner, etc., making all these preparations. When Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet and listening to him,
Yes.
and then Martha gets uh, kind of angry at Mary for not helping her, and Martha comes to Jesus and says, well, "Tell her to help me. I have to do this all myself." And Jesus says, "Martha, you're anxious and troubled about many things. One thing is necessary, and Mary has chosen the better part." In other
Ah,
words, what is it all about? Is it all about the details of the dinner, that the plates are set in the right place, that everything looks like that the table, the settings? Is that the purpose? That's the finger. You're looking at the finger.
yes.
You're not looking at the moon. The most important thing about the dinner is Jesus. You invited him. But so Mary gets it. So she's placing herself in the presence of Jesus, where Martha is taking care of the tangential outer details. It's like, some people, they can't pray unless their church is to their liking. Instead of saying I can pray in an empty room, I can pray in a room that has no pictures and no. Actually, it's probably best to do that. But it's not about the tangential things on the outside. It's not about the material things. It's about a person, and the person that Jesus was saying, one thing is necessary: sit at the feet of the Lord. That's the important thing,
And I think that's what the
and
Upanishads means, sit at the feet of the master. I
that's
think it's the
right.
same thing. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. So wait, one more Merton here. He
Yeah,
said you start.
I'm interested in that book, Jim. I'm going to write down because I'd like
Yeah,
to get a hold of a copy.
that's it
Uh,
right there.
okay,
Brand
let's
new
see.
and very big. Very,
Merton in California.
yeah.
Now, is there an author or a compiler or
Yes, this guy here, David.
Odorizio? All right, let me just write
Yeah.
that down. David ADO. Is it AD?
ODOR, like odor, and then
Right.
ISIO.
Okay.
But it'll come
Odorizio.
right up. It's the Redwoods conferences.
Okay.
And maybe we could do, while we're talking about books, you could recommend a few, like I'm holding up this guy. You know this guy, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you would
Well,
recommend Richard Rohr, and you
Richard.
recommended to me Anthony DeMello, who is amazing.
Yeah. Anthony DeMello. Another
Joan,
one. He's Benedictine John, Father John Main, Main,
yes,
John Main. Thomas Keating was
great.
another one.
He just
Um,
passed, I think, not too long ago. Right?
yeah, a few years ago. Yeah, yeah.
I think Brother David is still alive, right? It's
Brother
in his
David is
90s.
still alive.
Yeah.
Yes, it's time to rest. Yeah,
And then there's Julian of Norwich, and she gets a
right.
little more, uh, a little different than Meister Eckhart,
Hmm.
and taller. And how would you say it? Rusbrook? Rusbrook?
Yeah, Rosebrook. I
Yeah.
believe he's Dutch. Was Dutch
Yeah.
or Ricebrook. I'm not exactly sure. My Dutch is a little rusty.
He said, "You're only as holy as you want to be."
Hmm.
And Merton said, "To be a saint is to be myself." I just
Hmm.
love those. They're so immediate.
Yeah, there's no there's one thing is there's no way to measure your holiness. In other words, like, how close are you to God? Well, you can't measure that. There's no way. How holy are you? It's not about that. It's about not. It's about, as you said before, about becoming who you are. Let God take care of that. Just the only thing we can do is, I say to people, if they want, I really want to get close to God. Okay, do you pray? Do you make time? Again, going back to how do you sustain a friendship? By presence. You make the time to be with the person. You make the time to get together with the person. That's how you have to do it.
That's so
And
perfect. It's like
yeah, and
I likened it to this was as I was starting to unravel and get to this mystery, it was almost like you have to set the stage a little bit for me, and it was like a blind date with this eternal mystery. So if you had a blind date, you would, set the lighting, put on a little nice music, a little jazz, and the girl, the date is coming over, and you set the ambiance. So the same thing with God, you want to have the proper setting. It's like the same as taking a psychedelic, a medicine. You set the stage, you lower the lights a little bit, like Jesus said. How did Jesus say to pray? I love when you quote it. I can't quote it perfectly, but like, shut the door. I'll do my version. Shut the door, shut your mouth, shut the light, go to your inner room, and don't say anything, and the Father will appear or come, because it's already there. It's just you have to shut out all that distortion.
Right. That's right, and distraction. Yeah.
Can you say the real way?
Well, I'm trying to recall. When you pray, go to your room and close the door and pray to your Heavenly Father in secret, because your Father who sees in secret will reward you.
That's great.
So, in other words, don't, he was trying to counteract the showiness of the Pharisees. Again, they love to take the first seats and pray on street corners in order to be noticed. So, and Jesus, I assure you, they have already received their reward. That's why I have a problem in church with people who like to kneel down when they receive communion, and they suddenly drop to the knees. Like, look at me, everybody. I mean, spiritual pride is insidious, because the person looks holy, etc. But why are you doing that? Why? I would like to ask, why do you drop to your knees? Why do you do that? Is that, well, that's how I show God I love him. But you're standing out. Jesus said, beware of performing religious acts for people to see. He said it. So, just be natural, be normal, don't be out of the loop. Don't call attention to yourself.
And that fits the whole Zen idea of it's effortless. Don't try, don't grasp, don't, right? It's because it's who you really already are deep down. Once you strip away the persona and all the ritual, get away from that, and it's always there, lit up, waiting.
Yeah.
Like what Merton says here, you start where you are. Okay, so like DeMello would say, in a mess, right? Your life is a mess. So you start where you are, and then you deepen what you are already, what you already have. And then you realize you're already there. And that's that beautiful moment of, oh my God, it never left. I left.
Yeah.
It never, or Eckhart would say, Meister Eckhart would say, God is always at home. It is we who have taken a walk, something like that.
Yeah.
We stray.
Yeah. And Anthony DeMello has said that most people are sleepwalking. That's a good image too. They're not consciously aware of what's going on. They're just in sleepwalking. They're getting
like
around, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dreaming
Right.
and then awake.
Right.
And then Merton said here, we already have everything, but we don't know it. Like you said earlier, you just become aware of it. Once you become aware of this, and then you don't need all the kneeling and, like you said, the show, because it's already it's already your inheritance. It's
Hmm.
yours. So
Yeah.
we don't, but we don't know it and we don't experience it. Everything has been given to us in Christ, and all we need to do is experience what we already possess.
Hmm. Yeah.
Any non-dual kind of lines you could pick, like the Father and I are one, that come to mind from maybe the gospel, or seems like love thy neighbor as thyself is very non-dual to me.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like they are, there's a thread between both you and your
Yeah.
neighbor.
Yeah. I can't think of anything that comes off the top of my head, right now, but some of the things that you've quoted, Jim, are that kind of thing, you know, uh, but I would have to honestly say nothing's jumping out at me right now.
And this is just my interpretation, but I hope it's right in deep meditation. Can you go over that with the it's the bridesmaids in the Bible, and they're going to meet the groom.
Hmm.
And can we just do the story short, and then what it seems like is the ones and they have to bring the oil and the lamp,
Hmm.
and then some people don't bring it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the ones they didn't take the proper precaution that the bridegroom would be delayed in his coming, and they thought they didn't make that a provision, whereas the other maids did. They said, well, and in other words, the
So they
message is just
brought the oil and they put it in the lamp so they could walk out with the light and meet the groom.
right,
But
exactly,
a bunch of
exactly,
them did not do that. They didn't prepare. They were a little bit
right,
lazy, or whatever the
right.
word
Yeah,
was.
they were unprepared. They didn't count on the fact that this could be a possibility. And
Right.
apparently it often was a possibility that the bridegroom would be delayed in coming.
And then they asked
Um,
the girl, they asked the other maids, "Can I have your oil?" And
yeah, and they
and
say
you would
no,
think they would be generous, but no, no, not on this.
yeah, and they'll say, well, we can't because then we will all suffer because we just have enough for ourselves. If we give some to you, it will all be out.
No one makes
So
it. Yeah.
yeah, you're right. So I'm sorry, but it's about being vigilant,
Yes. A
et
little
cetera.
bit
And
of
again,
urgency. I feel that so much on this podcast and in my books, that we have this amount of time, but you have to be a little urgent sometimes, and get it done. You have to
right. Well,
desire
exactly.
it, desire this one thing.
Exactly. I mean, again, in any friendship, as the saying goes, it takes two to tango. In our relationship with God, like I said, if a person says, "Well, I really want to deepen my spiritual life," and then my question would be, "Do you pray regularly?" Now, regularly is not the same for everybody, but can you say, like, you want to maintain a good or deepen a friendship? Do you make time to be with the person? Do you stay in touch? Do you call the person? Do you get together regularly, or do you just kind of say, "Oh, gee, time has gone by, months, years have gone by"? You have to do your part in the relationship. God is always does his part. God's always there, but am I always there, or am I just I'm casual about it? Well, that's
Right.
the that's the problem of the unwise virgins. They were casual about it, and they didn't do anything. You got to do uh, as far as your relationship with God. You've got to do your part.
And they didn't make it, so they never had the union. That was the whole.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
And do you see yourself, when you're up there talking to the people, like a bridge between everything I used to reject when I was younger because I couldn't understand the dogma, and I couldn't understand. I took it wrong, and I thought I was arrogant, and I mean I was arrogant, and I thought it was above it. And do you see yourself as a bridge between all that dogma and then giving them that experiential truth beyond word, like there's all these words, but then you're the guy that could actually, like you said, illuminate it for them, and they say, wait a minute, I never saw it that way, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say when I preach on Sunday, I talk about the gospel, and I try to apply what's his teaching here, and how do I apply that to my personal circumstances? So I feel
So you bring
that
it home. Yeah,
that's kind of bridge that I am like, what did Jesus say? What did he teach? And then how do I live that in my life?
right. I like that. And wait, let's see. This is a beautiful quote by him, Rusbrook.
Okay.
Just to say, because people will ask me, well, I don't know, you know, they'll have some doubt the way I had so much doubt and skepticism. And I'll say, even if, like, it's like Pascal in a way, like that wager, that it's better to go for it, go to believe, or at least pursue this, than to not, because the benefits are so, I don't think there's anything on earth, no drug, no high, no anything that gives you such peace and such, I mean, wordless peace than this. And the way Rusbrook writes it here, if every earthly pleasure were melted into a single experience and bestowed upon one person, it would be as nothing when measured by the joy of which I write about. Like this, it's just true. It's so joyful. And I guess, like you're saying, they have to trust to, there's got to be that little bridge, or like Kierkegaard said, a leap of faith where you make the jump to it. And if you don't, you're going to suffer more and more until it squeezes, like fire squeezes you to make the jump off the cliff.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll answer that. I'll give my comments in a second. I just have to plug into a power source because I see
Sure.
that I'm getting a beep on my phone that
I'm going to pause. Okay.
Okay. So to review what you had said before about Van Rosbrook said, I'm sorry, he said something about everything I do, and when I pray, it's nothing.
He said if every earthly pleasure were melted, every pleasure was melted into one single experience and bestowed upon one person, it would be nothing when measured by the joy of which I write. What he's writing about, what the true experience of God.
Yeah.
Like if you took all the seductive nature of the world, all the pleasure, it's nothing compared to this. Well, like, I'll just do one more. And then Merton said, and this is, I feel it's like I wrote this. Love sails me around the house. I walk 2 steps on the ground and 4 steps in the air. Love carries me all around. I don't want to do anything but love. And when the bell rings, it's like pulling teeth to make myself shift because of that love, that secret love, that hidden love, that obscure love down inside of me and outside of me, where I don't care to talk about it. Anyway, I don't have the time or energy to discuss such matters. I have only time for eternity, which is to say for love, love, love. And it gives me, I love this part, soft punches all the time in the center of my heart. Love is pushing me around the monastery. Love is kicking me all around like a gong. I tell you, love is the only thing that makes it possible for me to continue to tick. So that, I'm just saying, that's the carrot that is there waiting, God's carrot, this immortal, everything's carrot that, so nothing comes close to this they need to make the dive. How do we get them to dive in?
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's people's expectation. Do they, again, I think the way we're programmed in our society is that if you invest effort, you should get these results. And unfortunately, with our technology being instantaneous, it should be right away. So people say, well, if I start praying, can you guarantee me that I will uh, not have problems in life? No, I can't. All right, all right. Well, what can prayer do for me? I think that's what the average person. And I'm not saying that they're being ignorant or facetious, but they don't. You have to understand the nature of prayer. It's that um, again, it's you know, to use Anthony DeMello's phrase about sleepwalking. What is it that takes to wake somebody up? This person is
Yes.
sleepwalking, and you say, "Well, wait a minute. What does it take to wake them up?" Um, I don't know the answer, except, or what would make somebody want to start praying. If somebody says, I felt this call to God, I felt this attraction to God. All right, what made them now finally wake up to it? Because that attraction is always there. God's always reaching out to us. It's not available only an elite group, but to all God's children. Why do some people wake up to it, other people don't? I have no idea what
Sometimes
that is.
it's hitting like a wall, like where they say those great lines, that great line, is this all there is? Like they
Yeah.
they run out of gas. It's like, running out like the prodigal son. You're going, you're going, you're going, and it just doesn't. You keep having to double down and triple down, and then it
Yeah.
doesn't. The life of pleasure doesn't last. After a while, you
Yeah.
get exhausted.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And some people find after it gets exhausted, like, well, maybe there's something spiritual, but it seems that there are other people, they never see a spiritual level to their life. And that's the mystery of it all, I think, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. So I like this quote by Joseph Campbell. Maybe you could talk about this. You must have a room or a certain hour or so a day where you don't know what was in the newspaper that morning. You don't know who your friends are. You don't know who owes you and who you owe money to. This is a place where you can simply experience and bring forth what you are and what you might be. This is a place of creative incubation. At first, you may find that nothing happens there, sort of just what you said, it doesn't pay off right away. But if you
Hmm.
have a sacred place and you use it, something eventually will happen. So they have to just take the gamble, right?
Yeah. And, are they going to give up before, uh, are they going to put a time limit on it and say, well, all right, if by the end of 6 months, if my nothing seems to be any better in my life, well, then I'll say that this isn't for me. Maybe,
Yes.
maybe that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Wait, one more Merton for you, on the words not working. And it has to be like you said, everything you're saying really is going back to prayer, or I'll say centering prayer or meditation. And not just thinking about it, talking about it, or putting a egg timer on while you give it 6 months or whatever. And
Hmm.
this is perfect. He says, it is certainly a wonderful thing to wake up suddenly in the solitude of the woods and look up at the sky and see the utter nonsense of everything, including all the solemn stuff given out by the professional asses about the spiritual life, and simply burst out laughing and laugh with the sky and with the trees, because God is not in words and not in systems, not in liturgical movements, not in contemplation with a big C, or asceticism, or in anything like that, not even in the apostolate, certainly not in books. I can go on writing them and all that, but one might as well make paper airplanes out of the whole lot. So sometimes we have to burn it all, right? And just get
Right,
back to that quiet
right,
time in a room.
right, right.
I just keep pushing for that, the quiet,
Yeah.
maybe a little. When can I ask about your routine? Do you put on a little chant music when you're alone, and how do you go about um, that stillness?
Yeah, I have a room in my house, and I'll put on different kinds of music like Gregorian chant or just sometimes adagio classical music, something
Yes.
to kind of drown out the sounds around me, the traffic that's going by on the main road, and then I light a candle. I may burn a stick of incense because in the Psalms, well, my prayer rises up like incense to you, O Lord. So that's a symbolic thing. Um, and just I try to center myself. I'll read a little bit, maybe a paragraph or two of a spiritual book, and then I just have just one candle burning, and the only light in the room. And then I just try to like slip into prayer.
Do you do a centering prayer with one word, or you just quiet?
Yeah, I do. I
Yeah.
have actually I use the word Jesus and I say his name, and I just try to be in his presence without thinking about anything, etc. And when I start drifting off into the monkey mind starts to be active,
Right.
I'll just say his name again, just spontaneously. Sometimes it'll be 5 seconds after. Sometimes I don't know how long I go, but sometimes it might be a minute, and then I need to say his name again to pull me back into
Yes.
the center. Yeah.
And it seems like, right, you're just twiddling the knobs on this beautiful
Hmm.
frequency and trying to get to that
Yeah.
holy instant, right? That holy
Yeah. Yeah.
spot.
Yeah. Hmm.
And can,
Yeah.
before you go, I know you're busy, can you just do one last thing on the
Yeah.
cloud of unknowing?
Sure. I'm reading that again. As a matter of fact, Jim, it's funny you should say that. This is about the fourth time
That's
I've
great.
gone through it, and it's the only book I've read that many times. The Cloud of Unknowing was written by a 14th century English mystic, and he just gives you a technique of praying. He says you imagine that God is in the cloud of unknowing above you, and you have to push all thoughts, all memories, all words into the cloud below you called a cloud of forgetting, and you have to
Ah,
be in the space of nothingness and just let your darts of love, he calls it, puncture the cloud of unknowing. So
so you send
that's
little darts up to like that
that's right.
paper puncturing to let the
That's
light,
exactly that's right.
and
That's right.
anything else goes under your feet or under you and just
That's
bury.
right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. And get to that beautiful
Yeah.
space.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you, Father Joe, for coming on. Is there
Well,
anything
Jim,
else
thank
you
you
wanted
very
to
much.
say
No,
or
no, I just want to thank you for allowing this possibility, and I hope maybe we can inspire some people to think about it, about prayer, if they haven't, or if they have, it may just give them some things to kind of think about, and maybe you and I could have been in this time a conduit, God speaking through us and our love for God and our love for people, that people will get a little bit closer to God, and that's an image. We're already very God's
yeah.
close to us, but it's just an image way of speaking, But
How close? Closer than our breath?
closer than that, even.
Closer than our glass?
That's right.
Closer than we are to ourselves.
That's right. Exactly.
I think people they're going to dive into it. Thank you.
Good.
Maybe you'll take a trip to Guatemala. I'll see you in New York.
Oh, that would be great.
Didn't you have some connection here or no? I thought there was.
Yeah, yo conozco una familia que de Guatemala, pero vive ahora en Syracuse, New York. Y me gustó mucho esta familia. This family moved from Guatemala to the United States, and then they
Yeah.
went to my parish, and they moved up to Syracuse. They just visited
Wow.
a couple of months ago, my house here in Middle
Perfect.
Island. Yeah, so and it's Guatemala, and they say you got to come because if you're going to speak Spanish or learn it a little better, You got to immerse yourself like you're doing.
All right, I'm going to get
So
you a
people
room
all
right
around
here
you.
in the hotel. You're all set.
Yeah,
I'll pay for it.
there you go. All
Thank
right, good
you.
buddy.
I'll see you soon.
Okay, mi hermano.